Professor Ngugi wa Thiong'o. Mr. Speaker, this motion is sponsored jointly by myself and the Honorable Senator Veronica Maina. The motion reads that aware that Professor Ngugi wa Thiong'o, a prominent author, academician, and human rights defender, globally recognized for his foundational contributions to literature and good governance, passed away on the 28th May 2025 at the age of 87. Cognizant that the late Professor wa Thiong'o had an illustrious career in writing and teaching literature spanning over 6 decades, where he authored landmark novels, plays, and poems that shaped post-colonial studies, contributed to social justice, and inspired generations of writers and thinkers across the world. Appreciating that the late Professor Ngugi wa Thiong'o advocated for indigenous languages and indeed took up writing in his mother tongue at a time when it was not fashionable to do so. Further cognizant that his legacy in inspiring many generations towards cultural sovereignty and the power of indigenous languages in literature and thought led to numerous international awards being bestowed upon him. Now, therefore, the Senate expresses its deep sadness at the death of Professor Ngugi wa Thiong'o, records its celebration and appreciation of his remarkable life, and extends its heartfelt sympathy and condolences to his family, friends, and the nation. Mr. Speaker, for those of us who grew up in the shadows of this great man during those days when we studied literature in our earlier years in life and in school, many of us remember Professor Ngugi wa Thiong'o as a man who fought both the colonial regime and resisted dictatorial tendencies of post-colonial Kenya without fear or favor. This great African literature giant died on the Wednesday of 28th May 2025, aged 87 years. Mr. Speaker, Ngugi wa Thiong'o was born under British colonial rule in 1938. He was anti-colonialist. He was anti-dictatorial. And he was also a militant proponent of the use of African languages. And he wrote many, many celebrated plays, including Devil on the Cross, including The Wizard of the Crow. He lived through the Mau Mau uprising as a teenager. During that time, he saw hundreds of our people abused, imprisoned, and tortured. During this conflict, Professor's father was forced to sell off his land, and he also witnessed the death of his 2 brothers during this struggle. And this struggle and his experiences formed the backdrop to the novel that made his name, Weep Not Child, which was published in 1964, just a year after Kenya gained its independence. Many of us will remember studying literature and talking and reading about this Weep Not Child and Professor Ngugi wa Thiong'o when we were younger. Professor wa Thiong'o, he grew up in the shadow of the violent war for independence in Kenya. He went to university in Uganda at a time of political and literary ferment across Africa. And he came of age first in Uganda and then in Kenya after it gained its independence. Professor Wathiongo was thrown in jail by the Kenyan government. After his release, he continued his writing and political activism, first in Kenya, then he went in exile in London, and finally in the US, where he was a professor of literature for over 30 years. Mr. Speaker, alongside writers such as Chinua Achebe and Wole Soyinka, he was part of a literary scene that flourished in the 1950s and 60s during the last years of colonialism on the continent of Africa. Mr. Speaker, Ngugi wa Thiong'o, unlike maybe the literary geniuses of that time like Chinua Achebe and Wole Soyinka, he was a militant because he wrote with a feeling. His books were cutting. It was like a panga against colonial and post-independence dictatorship and against the ruling elite at that time. Mr. Speaker, we celebrate his works and continue to read them to date. His first book of essays, Homecoming, is at once engaging and it is very polemic. I have mentioned his early novels like Weep Not Child, A Grain of Wheat, which had huge impact against the colonial government. He wrote a series of novels, short stories, and plays. As Ngugi became a lecturer in English literature at the University of Nairobi. Then he studied English. Then he argued that English department should be renamed and its focus should shift to literature around the world. He also said, why can't African literature be at the center so that we can have a comparison between the cultures, the African culture, the English culture, and the relationship between the two. Mr. Speaker, in 1977, he published his fourth novel, Petals of Blood. And then the play, The Trial of Dedan Kimathi, which dealt with the troubled legacy of the Mau Mau uprising. But it was his co-authoring of a play written in Kikuyu which led to his arrest and imprisonment in Kamiti Maximum Security Prison. He was jailed not for thundering political context, but for the play in Kikuyu called Ngahekande Nda, which means I will marry when I want. But even in prison, Mr. Speaker, Professor Ngugi wa Thiong'o continued to write. He wrote his memoir on toilet paper in prison. Mr. Speaker, sir, when Ngugi wa Thiong'o was released in 1978, he was exiled in 1982 when he learned of a plot to kill him upon his return from a trip to Britain to promote his novel Kaitani Mutharabaini, translated to mean the devil on the cross. He later on moved to the UK and to the US, where he worked as a professor of English and comparative literature in the University of California. When we look at Ngugi wa Thiong'o, Mr. Speaker, we look at a giant who never stopped thinking and who did a lot of political thinking and who continued to dream even in his old age and move that we should use more of African languages, because he believed that our culture as Africans is as superior, if not better, than the culture of the Europeans. Mr. Speaker, allow me to share with this Senate one of his most memorable quotes in his book, Decolonizing the Mind, written in 1986. And he said on this about colonialism, he said, colonialism normalizes the abnormal and, quote, the present predicaments of Africa are often not a matter of personal choice. They arise from our historical situations. Their solutions are not so much a matter of personal decision as that of a fundamental social transformation of the structures of our societies, starting with a real break with imperialism and its internal ruling allies. Imperialism and its comprador alliances in Africa can never develop the continent. Mr. Speaker, we mourn the passing away of this literary giant. We mourn the long gone days of men who stood for what they believe in, men who did not falter, did not think twice. Once they follow a path, they never backed away from what they believed. They never gave statements today, tomorrow, to deny them before this very same press where they gave those statements. Men who pricked our conscience as a nation, as a country. Men who developed a certain resistance that said, we can be better. We can be better. And Mr. Speaker, to his credit, although he talked a lot and fought so much for indigenous languages, one of the things we remember about Ngugi wa Thiong'o in the Pan-African Parliament is that he talked about the African and the fact that his civilization is just as good, if not better, than the European civilization. We celebrate him. In fact, when we talk about Kiswahili in the Pan-African, in the Pan-African Parliament, we also associate this with Professor Ngugi wa Thiong'o. His works traversed Kenya. His works traversed Uganda and the entire East Africa. His works went to the rest of Africa, the continent, and the world. Mr. Speaker, we have a lot to say about this man. And it was a great pleasure as a nation to host this man as one of our sons, and to be proud that we gave birth to such a man who gave to this country the spirit of fighting on, the spirit against colonization, and the spirit against post-colonial dictators who came after and tried to return this country back to where the colonial administrators had left it. Mr. Speaker, we pray for his soul to rest in good peace. And Mr. Speaker, our prayer is that Ngugi wa Thiong'o fought his battle. The second liberation, they fought their battle. And the young people who are in this country now, it is also your time to fight your own battle. As we plan our exit outside this time, when the sun finally sets, like it did for Professor Ngugi wa Thiong'o, we want to see another fire burning outside, coming to take over from where we left it. Because this country must be better than it is now. This country can be better than it is now. And this country would be better than it is now if we continue with the spirit of those who believed in this country, those who made this country happen, those who made this country be what it is. Mr. Speaker, so much can be said about Ngugi wa Thiong'o. We were outside town in Kisumu with the Energy Committee. And Mr. Speaker, Honorable Veronica and myself were engaged in very animated discussions about Professor Ngugi wa Thiong'o, together with other senators. And Mr. Speaker, the people that we interacted with, as young as they are, they still gave reference and deference to Ngugi wa Thiong'o. If you look at the internet, even our social media, it was awash with the news of the passing away of this great man and what he meant to this country. This Senate today honors this man. Mr. Speaker, this Senate today says thank you to the family for giving us this man. This Senate today, Mr. Speaker, honors the great son of this country, and may his spirit of fighting to make our country better, may it continue. May that renewal, Mr. Speaker, always be within us. May the fires of revolution, the fires of making this country better, may they continue burning with the people who will come after us. Mr. Speaker, with so many words, I beg to move and request Honorable Senator Tobiko to second this motion. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Felix Tobiko.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me thank Senator Mungatana for giving me the opportunity to second and to say one thing or two about Ngugi wa Thiong'o. Mr. Speaker, we mourn his demise as we celebrate his life. Mr. Speaker, Ngugi wa Thiong'o was a Kenyan author and academic who has been described as East African leading novelist and an important figure in modern African literature. Mr. Speaker, as has been ably said by Senator Mungatana, he wrote very many books, Mr. Speaker. He was able to capture the undiluted African society and setup through his books, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, The Guardian one time wrote that in his company, you could not afford to be lazy. And Al Jazeera said Ngugi wa Thiong'o was not just a writer, he was a militant. Mr. Speaker, has already been detailed, he wrote very many books that are still used in our literature classes today. And his life will live on through his books, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it's ironical that Ngugi wa Thiong'o, who completely was against colonialism and wrote a lot about colonialism, was forced by circumstances, Mr. Speaker, to leave his homeland, to go and live and stay in the land of the colonizers, Mr. Speaker. It is unfortunate, Mr. Speaker, that one time when Ngugi wa Thiong'o was around Kenya, the insecurity situation in our country, Mr. Speaker, I don't know whether you remember, when his wife was raped, violated, harassed in his own country, Mr. Speaker. It is unfortunate that we did not get to appreciate what we had in Ngugi wa Thiong'o until now, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, a lot of his writings are admired across the world. And so, Mr. Speaker, I arise to support, to second the motion by Senator Mungatana, and may the soul of Ngugi wa Thiong'o rest in peace. Thank you.
Senator Haji. Honorable Senators, I propose the question that aware that Professor Ngugi wa Thiong'o, a prominent author, academician and human rights defender, globally recognized for his foundational contributions to literature and good governance, passed away on 20th May 2025 at the age of 87. Cognizant that the late Professor Ngugi wa Thiong'o and an illustrious career in writing and teaching literature spanning over 6 decades, where he authored landmark novels, plays, and poems that shaped post-colonial studies, contributed to social justice, and inspired generations of writers and thinkers across the world. Appreciating that the late Professor Thiong'o advocated for indigenous languages and indeed took up writing in his mother tongue at a time when it was not fashionable to do so. Further, cognizant that his legacy in inspiring many generations towards cultural sovereignty and the power of indigenous languages in literature, and thought led to numerous international ones being bestowed upon him. Now, therefore, the Senate expresses its deep sadness at the death of Professor Ngugi wa Thiong'o, reckons his celebration and appreciation of his remarkable life, and extends its heartfelt sympathy and condolences to his family, friends, and the nation. Now I invite senators to make their contributions. And we start with Senator Wambua Enoch.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to eulogize Professor Ngugi wa Thiong'o. Mr. Speaker, I am a student of literature, and I have studied a number of works by Professor Ngugi wa Thiong'o. And I stand here today, Mr. Speaker, first of all to pass my condolences and the condolences of the people of Kitui County to the family of Professor Ngugi wa Thiong'o, the people of Mirido, and indeed the entire literary world for the loss of this literary icon. As Speaker, it shall be remembered that at the peak of his career, there was a lot of conversation in the literary world about the place of language in communicating literary messages. And a group of literary artists, led actually by Ngugi himself, believed that choosing a language is actually a choice of the audience.
Just a minute, Senator Enoch. What is your point of honor?
One. We don't have a quorum now. Honorable Speaker, if you can ring the bell. Togo.
Indeed, I've confirmed that we are short of 6 senators in the chamber. Therefore, I request the senator terms to ring the bell for 10 minutes.
Chuta, you don't call them each by leaving. You sit.
Why is he going?
I don't know.
He wants to close the house.
Honorable Senators, we have quorum. Senator Wambua, you may proceed with your time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to continue. I started, Mr. Speaker, by saying that I convey my condolences to the family of Professor Ngugi wa Thiong'o, the people of Karimidu, and the entire literary world on the passing on of Professor Ngugi wa Thiong'o. The Speaker, it shall be remembered by lovers and students of literature that Ngugi made a very big contribution in the global conversation around the place of language in communication. And is one literary artist who believed that language was not just a tool of communication, that actually language is a carrier of people's culture, that language, the speaker, is at the center of the shaping of the identity of our people. And that is why he wrote quite a number of works in his mother tongue, including the play titled Gai Kadeda, translated to I Will Marry When I Want, in 1977, which actually landed him in trouble with the government of the day. He was put in, and finally the UNICEF and other international bodies identified him and said that this man is a prisoner of conscience and pushed for his release. The Speaker, as we eulogize this great man in the modern
Senator Kinyua,
African literature.
What is your point of honor? Just a minute. What is out of order now?
I was just concerned because I know Wambua as a good editor, and the book he's talking about, I think, is Gai Kadeda.
What is your point
So,
of
so
honor?
I didn't know which book he meant that Ngugi wa Thiong'o wrote, that I will marry when I want, and I know it in another language called Gai Kadeda. So I don't know which book he's talking about.
Senator Wambua?
So is it a point of order, or he needs some information, the Speaker?
Takinwa is part of the cartel that stopped the progress of this session.
I believe so.
Yeah, he's not
So
related
we don't respond to
so
him.
you know him.
We don't respond to him. So the thing that Senator Kinyua, the thing that Senator Kinyua must know is that a lot of works by Professor Ngugi wa Thiong'o were translated into a number of languages, many, many languages. In fact, his short play, The Upright Revolution, or Why Humans Walk Upright, which he wrote in 2016, was translated into more than 100 languages. That is Professor Ngugi for you, and that's the man that we are eulogizing today. The Speaker, for the literary world, we want to tell them, we pass our condolences to them on the passing on of their colleague, and pray that, and there are good signs with the Speaker. I am encouraged to know that all the 4 children of Professor Ngugi wa Thiong'o, T. Ngugi, Mukoma wa Ngugi, Dushu wa Ngugi, and Wanjiku wa Ngugi, all of them, without exception, are actually published authors. They are in the literature world. They are writing and they're being published. So it's a good thing that he has passed on to his children. To our students in schools, Those who have had opportunity to study works of art by Ngugi wa Thiong'o, we all agree that they have been very, very thought-provoking, and that actually his works are the embodiment of the literary saying that literature is not based in a vacuum, that literature draws from society, and that Ngugi wa Thiong'o used the platform of literature to communicate social messages that touched on politics, on economics, and on development of the country and the region. The Speaker, may the soul of Professor Ngugi wa Thiong'o, the father of African modern literature, rest in God's eternal peace. I thank you.
Senator Odinga Oburu.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity. Mr. Speaker, sir, I stand here to mourn a friend and a brother. And Professor Ngugi wa Thiong'o was one of the true nationalists we had in this country during the struggle for our independence against the colonizers of this country. Mr. Speaker, sir, colonization came in several ways. There was colonization of the mind, which was colonization of the cultural colonization. There was the political colonization, and there was the economic colonization. Mr. Speaker, Ngugi wa Thiong'o fought against all this, but he is more known for fighting against mental colonization, cultural colonization. Because, Mr. Speaker, when the colonialists came to our country, they first of all despised the African religion. They called us primitive. And therefore they called this country colony. Colony means, where you have a people who are not civilized, who have no form of leadership, who have no form of religion. They have nothing. That they are just living next to that kingdom of the animal. Now, Mr. Speaker, this country had very rich cultures. It has very rich cultures of languages. And when somebody wants to colonize you mentally, Mr. Speaker, they start first with demonizing your language. Because cultures are expressed in our mother tongues. There are some expressions in Kikuyu which Ngugi wa Thiong'o used when he was starting to write, which you cannot express in English. Even if you try to translate them in English, they will not have the same meaning. They will never have the same meaning. And I know sentences in my own language, Luo, which are so deep that if somebody tries to translate them, even me, I cannot translate them into English. That means when somebody makes you believe that their language is superior to yours, they are, first of all, they are colonizing you already mentally. Because they want you to believe that their culture is superior. Then they introduce religion. They tell you their religion is superior. And they want you to also use their names. When you go to church, you are baptized Charles. You call yourself Charles, and Charles is just an English name. It is not even in the Bible anywhere. And you feel that as long as Donald, those are just English names which are nowhere even in the Bible. But you feel that because it is a European name, it's superior to your own name of Oburu or Otieno or Ngonga. You know me and Ngugi wa Thiong'o. His name is called Ngugi wa Thiong'o. Where is that Charles or William? It is not there. And even me, I'm Oburu, Ngonga, Molo, Oburu Oging. Those are my baptismal names. Because my father also refused to be culturally colonized. Ngugi said, no, I'm not going to use these names of the Mzungu. And he encouraged. I'm so surprised that during our days, Mr. Speaker, when we were being taught in standard 1, 2, 3, up to 4, we were taught in vernacular, our own language. I learned to read and write in Luo. And all the subjects were taught in Luo up to standard 3 when they introduced English. We started speaking English, doing exams in English in standard 4. And from standard 5 now, you had to do English, whether you liked it or not. If you didn't speak English, they gave you a disc in school. But Mr. Speaker, this great man wrote many books, more than 200 books, which he wrote, and they became literally, there were literatures in schools, and they were also not only in Kenya, but in Africa, in the whole of Africa, and in the world, because he went to teach in America. He was teaching Americans. He was not teaching Kenyans there in America. This was a great professor of the world. He was teaching, but he had great passion for our country because he believed that even after independence, when the flag was brought down, our people were still culturally colonized. Because a culture, when you misuse your culture, you also become like a slave. And he believed that even though we got our independence, that independence did not give us the freedom of being colonized culturally. It did not give us the freedom of being colonized economically, because our economies were still tied to the metropolis. We were like an appendage of the colonial regimes, and we have been unable since then, Mr. Speaker, sir, to shed ourselves of this colonial, we need to become truly independent so that we can develop our own economies, we can trade and not beg. Mr. Speaker, we can trade with the world because the world has become a world village. But we don't have to be beggars to go and seek money from the metropolis, carrying hats there, Mr. Speaker. And this, Ngugi wa Thiong'o believed in this very dearly, and he disagreed very sharply with a lot of people in leadership in this country. That is why he died somewhere out of our country, still believing that our country was the best, because when he came back to Kenya, he, at the airport, when he landed, Mr. Speaker, he kissed the soil of Kenya. He kissed the soil of Kenya, Mr. Speaker, because he believed that Kenya is the best as far as he was concerned. He loved this country so deeply, Mr. Speaker. And he actually died, of course, fighting disease like everybody else will go. There's nobody who will live on this earth for good. So we are celebrating Ngugi wa Thiong'o. We are not mourning, but we are celebrating his life because his life was great and he has left legacy. And that legacy will live forever. So I want to say that I want to just wish that the legacy of Ngugi wa Thiong'o will live, and that our children will study deeply what Ngugi wa Thiong'o was teaching And because our society has become so bad, Mr. Speaker, we have children who don't know their mother tongue. And they think that that is superior because they speak English. As long as they speak English, they think that they are superior than the others who don't speak English. Mr. Speaker, English is just a language of one country. Though it can help you to do many other things. But your own language will teach you your own culture, which teaches you the discipline of your people. Our society was a very disciplined and organized society, and it is becoming more or less like the European society, which is promiscuous. What they do really, there are things which are even unnatural, like a man and a man, and a woman and a woman. What is this, Mr. Speaker? This is completely un-African, and African have their own cultures. Mr. Speaker, this was not a session for me to give a lecture on this, but I just want to wish that the legacy of my friend Ngugi wa Thiong'o will stay to educate and to change our society positively so that our people can continue to fight for justice, to fight for positive change, so that our country can be liberated both culturally and economically. Mr. Speaker, let the soul of Ngugi wa Thiong'o rest in eternal peace. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Beatrice Ogola.
Honorable Speaker, I rise to mourn a gallant son of this country and of the whole world. One great writer, Ngugi wa Thiong'o. Honorable Speaker, Ngugi has left behind lots of wisdom. And I want to say that he lived a full life to me, and he fought a good fight. Honorable Speaker, I celebrate Ngugi because of so many things. But one or two of them, Honorable Speaker, is that Ngugi was one of our most educated scholars. I celebrate a Nobel-worthy writer, although he did not finally win one, but he won on 2001 a prize in Italy. But Honorable Speaker, something that is remarkable about Ngugi wa Thiong'o is that he believed in his identity. Honorable Speaker, we are not worth living if we do not believe in our identity. And Ngugi is one such gallant son of Kenya who was not shy about his identity. Honorable Speaker, Ngugi wa Thiong'o was named James Ngugi. But because of this identity that I've talked about, he's changed his name to Ngugi wa Thiong'o. Ngugi, and it is specific that it was a symbol of a rejection of a colonial influence. He believed that in taking the names James, just like my senior Senator Oburu Oginga has said, James did not identify with anything in his environment. And that is why he changed that name to Ngugi. Honorable Speaker, two things that stand out about Ngugi, amongst the many things that we can talk about, is his belief in culture and his belief in the indigenous language, Honorable Speaker. Some of us grew up in our formative years having to learn in our indigenous languages, as Senator Oburu and others have said. And Honorable Speaker, we are not shy about it because it gave us a foundation. A language is an identity. Honorable Speaker, in teaching a language, there are 4 basic skills that people learn in a language. That you learn the skill of speaking, the skill of reading,
the skill of writing, and the skill of, as you speak, you read, you write, and you listen. A number of us think, Honorable Speaker, that listening is not a skill. And in the books that Ngugi wrote, and for the students that were taught this language, they were taught these books, the issue of language remains a key. Honorable Speaker, why do I say culture is an outstanding aspect of Ngugi wa Thiong'o? Apart from changing his name, in order to symbolize a rejection of colonial influence, as I've said, he also emphasized teaching the indigenous languages. Honorable Speaker, we have so many languages in this country. As we demonize and as we talk about and as we say we should never be tribalistic. Honorable Speaker, it does not mean that we should not be proud of the languages that we speak, because it is an identity. But Ngugi promoted it in a way that it did not divide anybody. And that is why, Honorable Speaker, Ngugi even emphasized the teaching of oral literature. What was the essence of oral literature? That it brought an harmonization of our cultural environment. That, Honorable Speaker, we could teach our children, and this was a teaching that was passed from generation to generation through oral skills, that you could symbolically make a point and teach, even using certain traits of the animals that we have around us. Honorable Speaker, long time ago, grandparents and parents taught their children, before the coming on formal education, the grandparents used to teach their children, and people would get lessons related to even the traits of animals. Honorable Speaker, this morning I was at a meeting, and the presenter asked ourselves that as you introduced yourself, assume that you are an animal, and what does that animal symbolize? Some of them said they wanted to identify with the elephant, of course, because of the traits of the elephant. And for the first time, I learned, although I thought I knew, that an elephant has very sharp memory and long memory. Some talked about them being a lion. Honorable Speaker, was proud to say that I would have loved to be a cheetah, so that I would move with the speed to correct certain ills that bedevils this society. Honorable Speaker, coming back to Ngugi wa Thiong'o, he talked about speaking one's language, that speaking one's language is to celebrate one identity. It is that identity that I've talked about. And Ngugi was never shy about that indigenous language. But what does that tell us, Honorable Speaker? Ngugi wa Thiong'o was a very learned man. Why do people think in our societies that when you speak your indigenous language, then there's no modernity in you? Honorable Speaker, that is very far away from the truth. And Ngugi promoted the use of indigenous language because he believed that to impose a language on one was a way of dividing us, that in our different diversities, we come together as a common people. Honorable Speaker, some of the things that Ngugi wa Thiong'o in his books preached about, he was very much against dictatorship in his books. He was so much against tyrannical ruling. He was actually out and preached and wrote about injustices in the society. And Honorable Speaker, those are the same things that we keep on preaching today, that we do not want dictators, that we do not want tyrants, and we want a society that is just to everybody. A society that ensures everybody be they the young people like the ones that we have today, be they women, be they men, be they old and people. We want a society where everybody lives in dignity. Honorable Speaker, there are a number of books that Ngugi wrote. One of them was Weep No Child, The River Between, A Grain of Wheat. And two of them, Weep No Child and A Grain of Wheat, specifically talked about the impact of colonialism. Honorable Speaker, although the whites came and colonized us, a number of people came and fought, resisted this, but Ngugi was so creative that other than speaking out about it, he wrote about it. And the beauty of this, Honorable Speaker, is that what is written in books remain as a record to the society, and everybody can read, including the young students we have today. And I want to invite you that as you go out to read the novels that you are taught today, in respect of one Ngugi, a gallant son of this country, please go out and find a book, The River Between, and A Grain of Wheat, and Weep No Child, in honor of Ngugi. And for even a number of us that have not read, if you're not a fan of reading, at least go and read A Grain of Wheat. And as I've said, Honorable Speaker, one of his books that is very interesting is The Petals of Blood, and this is a book that led to his imprisonment. But one outstanding characteristic of Ngugi is that he believed in what he was writing about. He believed on the content of the teachings that readers would get from his books. And so, not even jailing him did not dampen the spirit of Ngugi. And so, as Kenyans, as I stand here to celebrate Ngugi, as I stand here to celebrate Ngugi wa Thiong'o, I'm calling upon all of us to celebrate and appreciate such great writers that we have had. Ngugi plays in another league, and we are calling upon also the government of Kenya that because we are celebrating this gallant son, let us celebrate him to the end. And may the government give him, come out and give Ngugi wa Thiong'o a good and a deserving send-off when his body is brought back to the country. I cherish the teaching of this great son. I've read his books many times. And as I've said, I ask everybody that has not read to take off time to read the works of Ngugi. And as I wind off and support this great motion by our Senator Danson Mungatana, we must as a country continue to celebrate our outstanding gallant sons and daughters. I appreciate Ngugi for sticking to his identity and for calling out everybody to be proud of their identity and of their culture. Honorable Speaker, culture is a way of life. As you live it now, and culture changes, but as culture changed in Ngugi's writing, the main themes remained in the content as he wrote them. Ngugi lived a full life. He fought a good fight, and may his soul rest in peace, and may he join our gallant sons that went before it. I remember one such writer, Margaret Ogola, The River and the Source, and many other writers. I want to compare Ngugi to people who came out boldly to shed off names that they were not comfortable about. One such person is Jaramogi Odinga. Yes, Adonijah Jaramogi Odinga. He refused to pick that other name. And Honorable Speaker, he fought for that identity. I celebrate Ngugi, and I want to say, Honorable Speaker, as I I conclude that let us keep on celebrating such gallant sons, and let us not be ashamed of our identity, our culture, and our environmental circumstances. Honorable Speaker, I support.
Senator Mohamed Faki.
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika kwa kunipa fursa hii pia kuchangia hoja ya kumkumbuka mwenda zake Profesa Ngugi wa Thiong'o. Mheshimiwa Spika, Profesa Ngugi wa Thiong'o ilikuwa ni gwiji la sanaa ya uandishi na ameweza kuandika vitabu vingi karibu 200, na vile vile pia ameandika michezo mingi ya kuigiza. Hivyo basi akaiweka nchi ya Kenya vile vile na Afrika katika upeo wa juu kwenye masuala ya sanaa. Mheshimiwa Spika, tukiangalia maisha ya mwenda zake Ngugi, alianza katika hali ya chini, lakini kwa kutumia kipaji chake na masomo aliyosoma aliweza kujiweka katika hali ya juu kabisa katika masuala ya usanii na kutambuliwa ulimwengu mzima kama gwiji wa sanaa. Mheshimiwa Spika, alipigania uhuru wa nchi yetu ya Kenya na vile vile pia alipigania lugha za Kiafrika ziweko katika mapu ya ulimwengu, kwamba ni lugha ambazo zinaweza kutumika kama lugha nyingine yoyote ulimwenguni. Mheshimiwa Spika, Muingereza ama mtu mweupe alipokuja Afrika, kwanza kabisa alidunisha na kudharau lugha za kienyeji. Lugha nyingi Mheshimiwa Spika haziwezi kutumika, na ndio mpaka sasa Mheshimiwa Spika nchini mwetu tunatumia Kiingereza kama lugha ya kwanza, wakati tuna lugha zetu ambazo tunaweza kutumia kama lugha ya Kiswahili ambayo imepata matumizi makubwa kutoka Afrika Mashariki na ya Kati, na sasa mpaka Afrika Kusini. Mheshimiwa Spika, lugha hii inatumika. Vile vile hata katika Pan African Parliament, bunge la Afrika, Mheshimiwa Spika, lugha ya Kiswahili inatumika na inatambulika. Kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika, msukumo wa mwenda zake Ngugi ndio ulileta kutambulika kwa hizi lugha za Kiafrika, na hivyo basi zikatoa mchango mkubwa katika kuunganisha Afrika. Mheshimiwa Spika, moja ya silaha ambazo zilitumika katika kuunganisha Waafrika wakati wa ukoloni ilikuwa ni lugha ya Kiswahili, Mheshimiwa Spika. Kwa hivyo mchango huu Mheshimiwa Spika ni mkubwa, na vile vile baada ya uhuru vile vile Mheshimiwa Spika, mwenda zake Profesa Ngugi aliona kwamba ni majina tu yaliyobadilika, lakini sio uhuru kamili wa Mwafrika. Ndio maana Mheshimiwa Spika, katika vitabu vyake vingi alijaribu kukosoa ule mwelekeo ama mwongozo ambao nchi ulikuwa unatumia ili kuendesha masuala yake. Mheshimiwa Spika, alijipata pabaya mwenda zake Ngugi